Are you sick to death of watching people like me giving you my opinion and acting like the big I am? If you feel you want to be a content creator, be a content creator. Don't worry about what you look like. Look at me, I've got moves, mate. It doesn't matter. I'm not attractive. I do it. Not many people consume me, and that's okay. It's not about being famous or anything like that. So if you want to go out there and express yourselves and do your things, come onto YouTube, go onto Instagram, go onto TikTok and do your thing. Express yourselves. It's the most beautiful thing you can do. I am Mick and you are watching my YouTube channel, Movies TV Mad. You can also follow me on X at Movies TV Mad and on Instagram, Movies TV Mad X. So, welcome. Today we've got a bit to talk about. We're not just going to be talking about one subject. I can confirm the secret is out. I have seen Rebel Moon. Very shortly we will be discussing that. I want to talk about DC Universe. James Gunn finally confirms that Nicholas Hoult will be playing Lex Luthor. We talk about the DC Universe as a whole. And James Gunn exchanging heated views with DC fans, and we'll get into that as well. And I will give you my Doctor Who bi-regeneration theory. But first of all today, I have seen Rebel Moon. And what can I say about this movie? Well, I am not going to give you spoilers. I'm not going to give you any details at all. I'm just going to give you my brief thoughts on the movie. If you like anything that Zack Snyder has ever done, then you're going to love this movie. If you don't like Zack Snyder's previous works, you're not going to like this movie. I still think you should give it a chance. It's stunning to look at, no surprise there. It's epic. The characterizations are brilliant. Now, we must remember, originally this was a pitch for a Star Wars television series that Lucasfilm rejected. Now, I've never been quite sure if it was George Lucas who rejected it back in the day, or if it was Kathleen Kennedy. That's something I don't know. Maybe get in the comments down below and let me know about that. But I really enjoyed this movie. But unsurprisingly, I love Zack Snyder's stuff anyway. So of course, I'm going to love this movie. I was reading a review that said it has that kind of chapter 1 problem. If you mean there's build-up, if you mean there's dialogue, yes, there is. It's okay to slowly build up a story and introduce the story and the characters, and that's all right. That isn't a problem. In the old days, we just used to watch movies and accept that they had a build-up, and it was a bit talky at times. You know, I hear this a lot, that the pacing was really bad. You know, just because there's talking and there's for a split second, there's not much action. But this movie does have great characters. Let's talk about Sophia Boutella. I'm sure I've just killed her name, but never mind. She's absolutely tremendous in this movie. For years now, Hollywood have tried to virtue signal the female lead, the powerful, the empowered, the impactful female lead, and they've done a piss poor job at representing women, because they talk about visibility, they talk about seeing yourself on the screen. In other words, we're so lazy and untalented, we don't know how to write women who are not in California. We don't know how to represent women who don't live in California, because they're the only women we've ever met. Not me, them. But Zack Snyder has always been good at representation and inclusion. His casting of Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman was fantastic, and when he was directing her, she was brilliant. When he wasn't directing her, she wasn't so brilliant, and I think that's a factual statement to make. But Sophia is absolutely brilliant in this role. Her character is brilliant. We've heard a lot of criticism in the past from the fandom menace when women are beating up tall, physically, who seem physically more able than women. The beauty of this character, when she is gaining a physical advantage over men, is because she moves faster than they can. She's got the moves. It's not about strength. But anyway, I believe a woman with training could easily beat up a man like me without any training. That's obvious, isn't it? So none of you should have any issue with this character. She's very good. She has got a strong arc. She's got a strong journey and destiny in this story, and she really works. Zach has got right, basically, in this film, what Disney Star Wars got wrong with Rey. There's a reason for her. There's a reason for everything. She's very relatable. She's very likable. She's a natural leader. It works because the casting, as well as the writing for her, is perfect. She comes across as the kind of woman that you would lead, look up to, and respect. As much as I love Daisy as a person and as an artist, you didn't see that with Daisy. It didn't really work with Daisy. Elements of that are within the creative process, the narrative, and the casting. So, yeah, I think that she's brilliant. I think the whole cast is brilliant. Junkie XL's music, unsurprisingly, is outstandingly compelling. But this is a brilliant sci-fi epic that you're going to enjoy, and bring on the multitude of director's cuts that Zach's going to give us before we even see part 2. But I think once you've seen this movie, if you're open to it, you're going to want more than 2 movies. Of course, we know there's going to be comics, there's going to be animation, there's going to be a whole franchise here. The elephant in the room here is, of course, it's not a pre-existing property, so Zach's not under the same pressure he was at the DCEU. He doesn't have to worry about $1 billion box office, but let's be absolutely clear about this, that Netflix have sunk a lot of money into this baby, and they want views, they want subscribers, and they expect Zach to cook. So Zach is still under pressure, but not under the same pressure. As I say, it's not a pre-existing property, so there's no worry about this character would never say this. Oh my God, you're representing this character too dark. Zach here has created these characters, so he can do whatever the fuck he wants with them. And as I say, if you like Snyder and you like the way he does things, you're going to love this movie. If you don't, you're not going to love this movie. But I think all in all, the visuals, of course, are brilliant, as we've already said. But there's a good core story here that really is brilliant. And, you know, really it's about freedom fighters. So it's a very relatable story in terms of that. But, I mean, I would love to ask Zach, what are the differences between the Rebel Moon he pitched for the Star Wars series and the Rebel Moon we're getting here? It's pretty clear he's already said that his Star Wars story would have had very little to do with existing Star Wars. And I think that would have been a great place to go, because once you decide not to go with Lucas's sequel trilogy, you do something new. New characters, new stories, new planets. That's what Star Wars always needed. But I don't think it would have worked for Zach, because Zach's Zach, and people would never have embraced what he wanted to do. Here, he can do whatever he wants. And I think it's important for Snyder and his fans, as am I, that he gets to cook his own way. Because it would be a bit like getting a chef to cook in a way of Ramsay. Because Ramsay's a great cook, right? And so let's cook like Ramsay because he's a great cook. Oh, you know, Zack Snyder was getting, why can't you be more like Kevin Feige? Why can't you be more like James Gunn? Well, he isn't Kevin Feige. He isn't James Gunn, right? And that's why. So, you know, his DC Extended Universe was very unique into what he likes to do. You can't expect one person to be like another person. As Zack has already said, if you wanted Kevin Feige and James Gunn, you should have brought them in. Surprise, surprise. They have brought in James Gunn. We're going to get into him very, very shortly. And DC Universe. So yes, I enjoyed this film. I think it's a very exciting sci-fi epic. And as I say, if you like Zack and you like what he does, you know, well, even strike that. If you're interested in visual, compelling masterpieces with a great story, with great characters that you find relatable, you're going to enjoy this movie. I would recommend this film to anyone. I had a really good time with it. It's, of course, beautifully directed. I think it's beautifully written. And one of the things that a lot of people who have already seen it have said, that it's epic, but it's beyond epic. It's a really good story. Is this the greatest movie ever made? Of course it's not. You know, we're not talking Titanic, we're not talking the big films, but it's a really good film to watch in the evening or a Saturday afternoon on Netflix. It's that type of film. So I really enjoyed Rebel Moon. I will be rewatching it on multiple occasions. I can't right now because it was only available to me once, but once it's on Netflix, I will be watching it again. We are going to do a proper, root and branch spoiler review of Rebel Moon, but I would absolutely recommend that movie to you. So, let's move on from Rebel Moon to James Gunn's DC Universe and Superman Legacy. He has finally confirmed that Nicholas Hoult has been cast as Lex Luthor. Personally, I have a lot of time for Nick as a person and especially an actor. I think this is absolutely super casting. And I suspect he really had to convince Nick to do this. Knowing Nick, I don't think this would have been something that he would have just said, yeah, give it to me, baby. But Lex Luthor is a really challenging character to play. Now, he's very good friends with Michael Rosenbaum, for me, who played the best Lex Luthor in Smallville, when he gave his reasons why he wasn't cast as Lex again. He said he was looking for someone to be around the same age as David Corenswet and to be his opposite, to be his polar opposite. And he said they had dinner together, they've been discussing how to go at Lex, because if Superman Legacy is successful, Nick's going to be playing this character throughout the universe, because Lex Luthor has an arm in everything around the DC universe, if you've ever read a DC comic book. So this is going to be an overreaching situation. So, I think it's great casting. Now, someone was asking me earlier, how would you go at Lex? Seeing James Gunn has said him and Nick are looking at a different way to go at Lex. I think what you've got to do, in a lot of ways, what Snyder and Terrio did in BVS was very interesting in terms of examining the hatred Lex has for Superman. But maybe they didn't go deeply enough to explain that hatred. And I think that's something you could do with Lex Luthor, because Nick is such a great actor. He could do it. We want to understand why Lex Luthor hates Superman so much. And I mean, I can tell you why quite simply. He's angry that he has those powers and he doesn't. He doesn't trust him. Lex Luthor genuinely believes he's the hero of this story and Superman is the threat, an all-powerful alien that could turn on humanity at any time. In a lot of ways, Ben Affleck played that kind of contemporary role as Bruce Wayne, saying that very thing in BVS. But I think that's the way you look at Lex Luthor. It's going to be very interesting how Nick plays this role as well, because there's lots of different ways that you can play this role. I mean, Gene Hackman played it very Bond villainy because it was, because of the times they were in then, and it worked. I loved Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor when I was a kid. It doesn't work now. And then, some people love the guy from Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman. He wasn't really for me. Michael Rosenbaum's Lex Luthor spoke to me because he was exactly how I would imagine a younger version of Lex Luthor. And we really got to understand Lex Luthor from all the things he went through with his father. Now, what's interesting about Smallville, Lex Luthor doesn't hate Clark Kent. He doesn't know Superman yet, but he doesn't hate Clark Kent. He loves him as a friend, even when they go on opposite sides. In the end of the Arctic episode, when he finishes his story arc off, he says, "I love you like a brother, but it has to end this way." Very, very different. It's not a wrong way to go at Superman. It's not a wrong way to go at the relationship between Clark and Lex. That's just how Smallville decided to do it. But in the comics, Lex Luthor absolutely hates Superman with a passion. There's no redemption for that relationship. And Superman doesn't hate anyone. But if Superman could hate someone, it would sure be Lex Luthor. Because Lex Luthor is the polar opposite of all his ideals. It will be a bit like, me, analysing me and Donald Trump. Donald Trump stands for everything that I don't believe in this world. I believe in compassion, helping someone when they're on the floor. And, if you've got fucking money, spread it out a bit. If you've got money to burn, that's why I don't like Taylor Swift. She makes so much bloody money. She shouldn't even be taking the money she's making anymore. She should be giving it to the hungry and homeless. And she doesn't. It's one of the reasons I don't like her. But anyway, we're not here to talk about Taylor Swift. And so, they're polar opposites. And I think that's something that James Gunn is going for. And I think Nicholas Hoult has just come off of a movie from Nicolas Cage. Forgot what it was called now, but I haven't seen it, but I've seen the clips. And, Nick looked absolutely fantastic in that movie. So I think Nicholas Hoult is perfect casting for Lex Luthor. I think he's going to be a great Lex. And I think, most of the casting that James has given us for Legacy and beyond in the DC universe at this point has been very good. Yes, casting his brother as Maxwell Lord, Sean Gunn, is questionable. It's not how I saw the role. I don't think it's how anyone saw the role. But I still think that Sean is talented enough to tackle that character in an interesting way. But it's weird casting. Even if he's the guy's brother. I mean, Zachary Levi being asked the same question. He goes, if you're the director's brother, you pretty much can have any role you want. Well, you can't play Superman. Not even James Gunn would be crazy enough to cast his own brother as Superman. Well, unless his own brother was David Corenswell. Is he? Conspiracy? No. So anyway, a lot of fans, especially Snyder fans, have been questioning James Gunn's casting and decision to populate Superman Legacy with so many other DC characters. And a fan came in and said to him, this doesn't really feel like a Superman movie. Like the other Superman movies were focusing on Superman. You're populating this like a Justice League movie. And James Gunn responded, said, well, we're not our movie. We're not those movies. We're our own movie. Now, it's a good response because that's true. You are your own movie. I get that. I understand that. But it's interesting, within all of that response from Gunn, he didn't deny that, because that's one of the things the fan said. He goes, you seem like you're not focusing on Superman. And he didn't deny that in his response. So that's interesting, isn't it? Maybe this is James' way of tackling the point that Superman isn't a relatable character. I think he's relatable. He's been relatable to me since I was a small boy. Every time I felt depressed or anxious, Superman has been there for me, whether it was Christopher Reeve, whether it was Tom Welling, Brandon Routh, Henry Cavill. He's always been there for me to help me as an inspiration. When I was being bullied, I could come home and watch Christopher Reeve in Superman the movie and feel better about myself and my young life. So let's not get that twisted. He's been relatable to me, but he hasn't been relatable to a lot of other people. Maybe it's difficult for James to think of a way to focus a film totally on Superman. But in truth, I don't think that's the reason. I think already there's been about 10 people cast, existing DC characters cast in this movie. And James says there's going to be a lot more. Wow. We've spoken about this before. He wants to create a living, breathing DC universe in this movie. It doesn't actually mean he's not focusing on Superman, because I'm guessing that these characters don't get that much screen time anyway. But he wants to show you that there is a version of Green Lantern, right? He wants to show you that there is a Hawk Girl, etc., 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 right? And Lex Luthor is a very important part of Superman's world, so that, that's not a brand new thing for a Superman movie to have a Lex Luthor. But there is going to be a lot of DC characters in this movie, and does that distract from Superman? As I say, I don't think it does, because at the end of the day, these characters are not going to have much screen time, but they're going to be there. Now, for me personally, I don't see an issue with this, right? Yes, I didn't like the way Henry was treated. I love the Snyderverse, but it doesn't mean I'm a Snyder everything, right? It doesn't mean that I'm just going to go against everyone who does something in DC, and if it's not Snyder, I'm going to attack them. I think it's quite exciting that we're getting all these DC characters in Superman Legacy. I'm embracing it. I think it's interesting. And I'm here for it. But here's a saying we use in the UK. I'm not in the UK, but I was born and bred in the UK. The taste of the pudding, I think that's how it goes. This is how it goes. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. And I can't tell you if Superman Legacy is going to cook like a fine meal or like an old cold meal. Basically, until we watch that movie, until we see a trailer, we are not going to be able to get a sense if we're going to like it or not. Even James Gunn doesn't know what he's doing, whether what he's doing is going to be successful or not. No creative knows if what they're doing is going to work. But here's the thing. When you're making something, when you're doing a job, when you're a manager of a shop, all you can do is the best of your ability. You're the best in your personality. You can't be other people, like we've already spoken about Zach not being Kevin Feige, not being Jeff Johns, not having that mentality of that brighter, inspirational universe and doing something a little bit more restrictive, because that's what Zack Snyder does. You know, everyone's just got to be true to themselves. I can't do a YouTube video like Mark Goldbridge. I'm not Mark Goldbridge, or what's the other one? Who's that Scottish guy who talks about films? The critical drinker. I can't be the critical drinker. I can't be Gary from Nerdrodic. I can only be me. That's it. That's all I can be. So that's not particularly successful for me, but as I said before, the motivation of my platforms is not to make money. The motivation is for me to gob off because I'm very opinionated and I like the sound of my own voice. Now, if any of this becomes successful without me paying for ads and, having to share every day, I can't be bothered with all that. So if this becomes big on its own, it becomes big on its own. So we can only be ourselves. And James Gunn can only be true to James Gunn. So James Gunn is going to cast the people he knows and trusts. And he's going to employ people he knows and trusts. James Gunn has always done that. He did it with the Guardians trilogy. He did it with the Suicide Squad. And he's done it again. So James Gunn, it's not a surprise that his brother has like 3 or 4 roles in this movie. I mean, those other roles are small roles anyway. We've just got to see if it cooks or not. So I'm not triggered about him casting his brother. I'm not triggered by his response of, we're not those movies. I mean, a Snyder fan was quote tweeting saying, he's basically disrespecting Man of Steel. He's not disrespecting Man of Steel. He's never said anything about Man of Steel. But if he doesn't like Man of Steel, he's well within his rights not to like Man of Steel. If he loves Man of Steel, he's well within his rights to love Man of Steel. Like the so-called alleged comments he said about like Tim Burton's Batman and stuff. It did sound quite disrespectful, but he said he was hacked. But that's his view. That doesn't really go to give us any proof that he can't make his own stuff. We know that James Gunn has got an ego, and it's an ego he doesn't hide. He's very confident in his own ability, and he should be. As I've said before, he ain't Coppola, he ain't Scorsese, but he's a good writer-director, and he's certainly proved in terms of comic book material that he can cook. And when I hear him talking about DC, one thing I know, he knows his DC. Now, there was a bit of controversy about who he cast as Maxwell Lord, but like another casting he made, he started complaining at fans for calling Maxwell Lord a villain. Because there are certain graphic novels and stories where Maxwell Lord is more of a leader of kind of a group of people. And, my knowledge of DC Comics isn't that deep that I can remember the name of the group, but he does lead a group. I think he even leads the Justice League for a little while. That may be the group he leads. And James was saying, yeah, he's a little bit of a con man. He's a little bit immoral, but he ain't a villain in those stories. And that's clearly the Maxwell Lord he wants to focus on. Because to be honest, we've already seen Maxwell Lord being a little bit of a villain in Wonder Woman 84. As I always said about that from Pedro Pascal, he really is the only reason to watch Wonder Woman 84. I think the performance is great. He's not really Maxwell Lord. He doesn't feel like Maxwell Lord, but it's a great performance at the very least. He's a great actor. But this is going to be different. So Maxwell Lord isn't necessarily going to be a pure evil villain. And maybe, and it's looking like, maybe he will be the leader of the Justice League. So, as I've said many times, James Gunn is going to make this very comic booky. Because one thing we've got to remember, he's a comic book guy. He's a comic book nerd. It's clear he knows his stuff, whether you rate him or not. And I know, like, the Snyder fans that are just here for Zack, and that's not me. I admire Snyder. We've just spoken 20 minutes ago about Rebel Moon, but, you know, I'm not just here for Zack. As I've said a billion times, I'm here for DC, I'm here for Doctor Who, I'm here for a lot of things, right? But there's some people on the internet that just live and breathe for Zack Snyder. There is nothing wrong with that, but I think sometimes you have to pull your heads out of the gentleman's backside and think logically. And I think that James Gunn could potentially do a good job. He could potentially not do a good job, but I don't think we can dismiss him. He does have knowledge of Marvel and DC. He clearly understands his shit. That's one thing. And as I say, I'm excited about having a living, breathing Superman movie, a living, breathing DC universe with all these DC characters already there. And in fact, because we've gone the other way before, we had a Superman movie that just focused on Superman back in '78. With no other characters apart from Superman supporting characters. We had the same with Batman 89, blah-de-blah-de-blah. And, you know, Zack tried to build out his universe slowly, as did Kevin Feige. And this is Gunn saying, we don't really have the time to do that now. We have to cook straight away. So he's bringing out a living, breathing universe. But just because you've got all these characters, it doesn't mean you're edging out Superman. So, I mean, as I've said before, the only thing that will make me not be involved after Superman Legacy, if this is a genuine legacy movie about a character who dies. You kill my hero Superman, James, we are done. I'll always talk about DC, I'll report you the news and all that shit and give you my opinions on that. But if Superman dies at the end of Legacy, I will be done. He's my hero, I want him to be one of the mainstays, and killing him off, for me, isn't an option. Now, hopefully, fingers crossed, I'm being a bit paranoid with the name Legacy, and that ain't going to happen. But I'm telling you, I wouldn't be happy. Right, moving on from DCU. As you know, Doctor Who has been my specialised subject in recent weeks because we've had these free specials. I stick by my assertion that these Doctor Who specials haven't felt like a sense of, you know, an anniversary should have a sense of occasion. Now, the defenders of these free specials say, oh, you lot just want returning characters. Why does there always have to be fan service? Why do fans always have to get what they want? Blah, 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 blah. It's nothing to do with that. I just wanted to feel a sense of occasion of a 60 years anniversary celebration. And I didn't feel that until Shooty turned up in the third act of The Giggle. Then I felt that sense of occasion. I felt like I did in The Day of the Doctor, where we were kind of doing our own thing within a story, but we were also, you know, kind of having a little bit of nostalgia with Tom Baker. But at the same time in that Tom Baker scene, he basically tells the Doctor it's time to start looking for Gallifrey, and you feel that sense of a new direction for Doctor Who. And that's what I felt with this bi-regeneration. So right now, briefly, I'm going to give you my bi-regeneration theory. I believe the Doctor's old face coming back and the bi-regeneration are all to do with the false regeneration in the power of the Doctor. Now, this was my original reason for why the Doctor's old face came back in his 14th or their 14th regeneration. I'm still sticking to that theory, and that's why there's been a bi-regeneration, because none of this is normal, right? This isn't just something that can happen. The Doctor can't regenerate into their old face. We know that. The Doctor shouldn't be bi-regenerating. So something is happening. And this is why I believe that RTD undercooked the anniversary specials purposely, because I believe he's trying to rebuild the brand slowly but surely. And I'm okay for that, and I'll tell you why. Because at the end of the day, right, Doctor Who needs rebuilding up. But it's clear that RTD this time is happy to gaslight some of the fans, especially the people who don't have his ideology. And so there's going to be a lot of gaslighting. There's a very political episode coming in Series 14. Sorry, I mean Series 1. So that'll be interesting. And the song, I don't know if you've heard it, but the song from the Christmas special is #1 on iTunes. So much for RIP Doctor Who. Let's readdress the ratings. Let's readdress the numbers before I continue to quickly and briefly talk about my, bi-regeneration theory. They're not blockbuster. You're looking at 5 million overnights. You're looking at 450, overnights. They're not blockbuster. But in today's terms, they're very, very solid. And, when the BBC iPlayer viewing figures are added to that, you're looking at 650. I think with Star Beast, it was around 7 million. Not bad. So not blockbuster, but not bad either. But RTD can rebuild that to be even higher. But it's going to take time because the Chibnall era and near the end of the Moffat era did damage the brand a little bit. And people started to lose interest. So, Doctor Who is no longer the mainstream darling it was in RTD's first era. I also believe, going back to the bi-regeneration, that the 14th Doctor will be a mentor to the 15th Doctor played by Ncuti Gatwa. I also believe what happens to the 14th Doctor happens to the 15th Doctor. There is a connection here. And what about the graveyard sequence we've seen in some pictures in the Christmas special, The Church on Ruby Road? The Doctor sees something at this graveyard that horrifies him. I do believe, and I think I mentioned it yesterday, that I think David Tennant will cameo in that episode, probably at the end, and that's why I mean he's going to be like a mentor to the 15th Doctor. What does our new Doctor, Ncuti Gatwa, see at that graveyard? Is it a gravestone with the 14th Doctor's name on it, or is it Ruby Sunday? Something's going on there, so that's my little theory. But if you're starting to lose faith in Doctor Who, this is RTD. He has done it before. I do believe he can do it again, but we are living in polarizing times, and they are going to continue polarizing the audience. And I mean, it's interesting, Ncuti Gatwa admits he lives in he's from, his environment of working is a liberal bubble. That doesn't necessarily mean he's a liberal, by the way, but he admits that. And let's be honest, the whole of the entertainment industry is in that liberal bubble. I mean, look, I'm a liberal as well. So, and as I say, there's going to be an episode where they do deal with a right-wing politician. So that's going to be interesting what RTD does there. But yeah, let me know what your theory about the bi-regeneration is, because there's one thing for sure, and RTD's already admitted this. This means big change. This is a story arc. And I think once Ncuti's Doctor regenerates, I think the 14th Doctor, played by Tennant, also will go as well. Because as I say, they are connected. So what happens there? Will RTD be willing to say goodbye to David Tennant's 14th Doctor forever? We will see. One thing's for sure, for the time being, David Tennant is the Doctor, as well as Ncuti Gatwa. Now this is interesting. I think he's kind of going to be the Captain Jack Harkness figure, not in personality, but the guy who has his own show, maybe a unit reboot or something like that. But someone like Blockbuster who can come in and cameo sometimes at the end of the season. And I think, look, that's the kind of thing RTD is building out. Now, we don't know what he's really planning, but one thing's for sure, this bi-regeneration situation is very, very interesting. And I do have a lot more theories swirling around in my head.